we need to understand this phenomenon, that if the rise of Islamophobia continued unabated like that in the West, the main victim of its fallout would be the West, not the Muslims as such. Of course, Muslims, those who are living in the Western countries, they would have to suffer a lot in terms of racism, in terms of prejudice, in terms of seclusion from the societies, in terms of their kids not having enough respect in the schools, in terms of having the women having some kind of brutal attacks from the racist in the markets. So these kind of things that the Muslims, those who are living in the Western societies, they will of course have to suffer from these kind of things. But the most important thing is that the societies where the Islamophobia is on the rise, they are now have become the volcanic societies, where any kind of abnormality in their law and order can erupt any time, because Muslims are not just a few numbers those who are living there, rather they are having huge numbers. For instance, if you take example of Muslims living in the UK, there are more than 4 million those who are available in all across Europe, in whole of the UK, in majority cities of France, in major portions of Belgium, in many parts of Germany. And if you take example from the United States, you can see the Muslims are living in the heavily populated areas, and those areas in the United States which are very important for earning some kind of, you see, foreign exchequer from the United States. For instance, California, for instance, Houston, for instance, New York, Muslims are living there in majority. And if these places are becoming somehow volatile in terms of law and order situation because of the kind of Islamophobic attacks being inflicted by the racist on Muslims, so what will happen? The economy of these countries and economies of these cities and law order situation of these countries, of course, will become very dangerous, and that will of course recede the overall process of development of these societies. I think we need to understand this thing. So West has to understand this thing, that they have to stop through some kind of legislation the rise of Islamophobia in their societies, because if it continues, they are the ultimate sufferer. Now the question is that how to counter it. I mean, I think we need to of course distribute the responsibilities of reducing Islamophobia in the Western societies. So first I will come on this, that what kind of responsibilities should be reposed upon the Western governments and the societies and the leadership. What should they do it? I think that they have to create this kind of, you see, awareness among the people, that Islam or the Muslims are equal to whatever the people, those who are living over there. Islam should not be taken as a distinct religious ideology which is having some kind of inimical things to the ideologies that their societies are practicing. Islam is just a religion like other religions of the world. So Islam should not be taken as a distinct identity. Rather, Islam should be considered as the identities like the other identities. Number one thing is that this is kind of awareness that their leadership has to create, and their leaders have to of course open up their minds. I mean, those people, those who are holding very important positions in the West and are making some kind of polemical speeches on the media, they should stop, and there should be some kind of pressures group within the Western society to stop them doing those kind of things in the media and in the open places or in the public spheres. So this is the first thing that they are supposed to do. Second thing is the legislation. Probably they have to introduce a very stringent legislation instead of having something which is going against Muslim and against Islam. For example, I can give you example from France, from Germany, from Belgium, from Denmark, where the burqa, or you can say the veiling, has been banned over there. I mean, this is a very clear indication that some kind of state level Islamophobic things are being initiated against Muslims and Islam. They should avoid doing anything like that. If they continue like that, of course, then the Islamophobia would definitely be on the rise, and that would not be something in favor of those countries, their peace and their economic development. The third thing, which is very important for the Western societies and on part of the Western governments, that they have to do it, that they have to of course introduce those policies where the inclusiveness of the Muslims and Islam as a religion should be clearly indicated over there. Now, inclusiveness means that they have to be invited into the government jobs. They have to be invited into the jobs which are the mainstream jobs. They have to be invited into the legislation process. They have to be invited at the board level, at the council levels legislations. So I mean, the inclusiveness of the Muslims in the Western societies is of course very important, that the West has to do. Now comes to that, what are the primary responsibilities which the Muslims living in the West, what responsibilities are supposed to be expected from them. This is very important. The Muslims have to, of course, forgive those things which they are doing to have a shape of ghettoization in the Western societies, by having a completely isolated space, by having those kind of dresses and those kind of things which are helping them identify themselves within a major society which is not, of course, a Muslim society, which is not in fact a primarily Muslims dominated societies. So developing a some kind of distinct identity of those societies is not giving any good to Muslims, rather causing more harm to them. So Muslims have to realize this thing, that they have to integrate into the Muslim societies, integrate into the Western societies, and integrate into the culture where they are living in. So this integration would, of course, help reduce the overall negative sentiments which are usually there among the Westerns towards Muslim. So this is something very important. The second important thing is that the religious rituals or the cultural rituals which normally have been following in their own countries, in their own societies, they are to be, of course, somehow modified in the way that is acceptable in the Western societies. Instead of having those kind of peculiar things to be practiced by them in that way, which is in fact creating some kind of distance of Muslims from the Western societies, that has to be avoided. They have to, of course, integrate their cultural values and their peculiar cultural things into the Western society and the societies they are living. That will in fact help them to reduce these kind of, negative sentiments towards them. And the third important thing is that Muslims have to come into the leadership role. I don't see really the Muslims are playing leadership role in the Western societies. They normally are more interested to do businesses. They are more interested to go for the jobs which are more like money minting jobs, instead of having some kind of leadership jobs where they are to represent their community to the overall, larger scale Western societies. So they have to, of course, join those professions. They have to, of course, join the parliament businesses. So they are to, in fact, come up into those kind of positions which are the leadership positions, where their visibility should be very clear to the world, and their positive outlook should be clear to the people, and that positive outlook would definitely be giving them a positive notion about Muslims and Islam. So this is, I think, something very important and part of Muslim. And of course, Muslim government should also help people to have these kind of things, instead of living in some kind of, isolation, or keeping their separate and a distinct identity intact in the Western societies, will ultimately cause both of them, Muslims as well as the Westerns.